Hope everybody is doing well. The key word here in Durham, North Carolina, as we're going to start this online dinner party, is hot because there's definitely been some hot weather. I was talking to some friends of mine and all along those lines, and we're talking about the fact that it has been around the 90s and in that kind of space here in the Carolinas. So there's definitely been some hot weather. So a lot of people are staying inside in the AC or having the fans blow or doing other things to stay warm and all, or cool, I should say, and all along those lines. And of course, as y'all know, sometimes I am coming at you from the Hayti Heritage Center if I'm not in my home studio and home location. So that is not the case today. I'm in the home location, but yesterday I was at the Hayti Heritage Center. And of course, we had a number of events going on this past weekend, and they were all very interesting events. We actually celebrated the blues music and had a gentleman, William Ferris, that I'm hoping will join us on an upcoming edition of this show. They were talking about his roots in the blues and having grown up in Mississippi, and even seeing some of the racism and other things that were going on that helped to kind of birth the blues and all along those lines. So William Ferris is a professor at UNC and has definitely been documenting the blues history and all along that kind of way. And Roy Roberts, who I want to say is in his 80s and has been performing for a number of years, and as many people would say, just like they talk about Buddy Guy and everything, he's 80 years young. So he was still doing his shuffle and his dances, even though he's 80 years old, and was definitely keeping the crowd rocking and everything as he was doing some blues numbers, but also some old classic R&B numbers and things along that line as well. So that was a fun event that was taking place on Sunday, and on as part of the BAM series. It was the close of the BAM series because I think that they will start back that in September at the Hayti Heritage Center or sometime in the fall, if I am remembering correctly. And of course, this weekend there will be Juneteenth celebrations. As a matter of fact, one of them will be at the old Bembe location, which was down at North Carolina Central University. And I think they might even be doing it at the Library Bowl, where Bembe used to be held. And now Bembe is held at County Stadium. And of course, it's had other iterations and other places that it has been held at as well. Matter of fact, they had a little bit of a controversy with Bembe this year because they thought they had a contract with Monica. Turned out they not have a contract with Monica, and Monica wound up not showing up. And now they were trying to get the money that I think they sent out and all in that space, because apparently there was some serious miscommunication with the booking agent and all in that space. So it'll be interesting to see, as the city, I think, is trying to recover that money. And I may have even heard that they got it back. I got to double check on that. But they'll have some fun entertainment, both local as well as I think some regional and national ones at the Juneteenth this Saturday. And they will do at Hayti our Juneteenth on the 21st. And I know I've got 3 speaking engagements about history that will be taking place on the 17th, the 18th, and the 21st. So on the 21st, I'll be talking to some folks connected to our state and the state government. So they'll do a WebEx presentation, and I'll be talking to them about Juneteenth, but also the history of urban renewal and Black Wall Street and all along those lines. And on the 17th, I've got a presentation that'll be involving, if I'm remembering correctly, folks that are part of an international focus group. So there'll be some diplomats from places like Belarus and definitely even somebody from Kenya and a number of other places. I think there were 2 Eastern European countries. I remember Belarus being one of them. I think Uzbekistan was the other one. And there'll be other people that'll be there, and we'll be talking about how human rights plays into both our current situation as well as some of the groups that have met or has had meetings in the past at Hayti or in the old Black Wall Street area that were centered around human rights, whether that was in the 60s, the 70s, or even some of the groups that have done it in the 21st century as well. So I'll definitely be talking to them about that also. So that will be going on, and I look forward to that conversation, just like I look forward to talking to the scientists out in RTP, and I'll do that one on the 18th. So there are a lot of things that are going on in that space and everything. And last but not least, it is time to get out the vote and for people to have their get out the vote campaigns. So one of the HBCU think tanks was celebrating their 10-year anniversary at the center yesterday, and I gave a little bit of a talk, a very short one, about 5 minutes there, just kind of making some parallels about Martin Luther King's fill up the jail speech, which was held at White Rock, which was next to the St. Joseph's, and Hayti is the original St. Joseph's building. Both of those buildings have now moved to newer locations over the last 50 or 60 years, and maybe in some cases even longer than that and everything. But definitely at the time that he did the fill up the jail speech after the sit-in movement in Greensboro and other things, they were located in the part of the area that I know and where the Hayti Heritage Center is located now. So I use that as a context to talk about how they can definitely help their students get mobilized and get out to vote and all along those lines. Because I think it was two organizations. I want to say the Common Cause, which a lot of people knew because of uh, President Obama and everything. I think he was one of the people that kind of launched it initially and everything. And also the North Carolina Black Alliance, if I remember the name of that organization as well. So they were out there definitely having a brief panel about the importance of HBCUs, as well as talking about what was going on in their space as well. So like I said, a lot of things are going on in my life and a lot of things are going on. But as you know, with the dinner party, I love sharing with amazing guests and seeing what they're about. And I had the pleasure earlier of talking to Les. I'll bring him in second and all along those lines. So I'm going to bring ladies first. I'm going to bring in Marbeth to learn about what she's got going on. And I've also got Taylor with me as well, who's talking about a national divorce. But we'll start with Mary, and then I'll bring in Les and Taylor as well. So Marbeth Dunn, it's very much a pleasure to have you. I hope the weather is doing better where you are in your world, because right here in Durham, North Carolina, we're still talking regularly about hot weather. We're also talking sports because, as you may know, this is ACC territory, and a lot of times people are very much engaged during the basketball season because of the Duke, UNC, and of course North Carolina State, which had a run to the championship, even though Connecticut beat them, and all along those lines. But definitely they had that run, an improbable run, because they were very much in like near last place when they were in the ACC tournament, but they won the tournament and then made a serious run in the NCAA tournament, and now they will be in the Baseball College World Series along with UNC. I think there are 6 other teams, including one from Florida, Virginia, who Carolina will play, Kentucky, and some other teams that are not coming to my mind. But a lot of people are paying attention to that. They're paying attention to Pinehurst, which is just down the road from me, because that is where the U.S. Open is being competed in, and all along those lines. And of course, they're paying attention to soccer championships and NBA and NHL finals, even though right now 2 teams are up 2-0. And as the odds makers would say, it's very hard to win 4 games in 5 matches. Not saying it's impossible, but the odds are against you, and all in that space if you're already down 0-2 versus 1-1 or being 2 up, as is the case with the Florida Panthers and the Boston Celtics and everything along those lines. Of course, some people are also paying attention, if they're into cricket, into T20, into some of the tennis matches that are going on. And of course, there is the hockey finals as well, which is featuring Edmonton against Florida, and all in that space. But like I said, a lot of things going on politically, because we also had the Hunter Biden and the Trump convictions, and a lot of things that are going on in the space of a lot of different parts of the world, even the cultural world, because I know some people that are excited to go and see Bad Boys 3 or Bad Boys 4. I forgot what number they're on, because that's the one that stars Martin Lawrence and Will Smith and all along those lines. So a lot of things are happening in the world, but share a little bit about your world and what's going on in your space and how hot it is where you are, if it's hot at all.
Well, actually, we've had some relief, Mark, because it's been raining since yesterday. I'm in Florida, so home of the Panthers, right?
Yes.
And so I'm here in Florida, South Florida, and it has been dark, very dark, and very rainy. They're talking 10 to 15 inches of rain here.
Wow.
Yeah. And here we are in hurricane season, too.
Yeah, we are in the middle of hurricane season. I didn't know that, because we have even had some news reports where people are concerned about what to do if a hurricane should come, because yes, North Carolina has been hit by those, not hit as often as you are and everything, but we have definitely been hit by them in the past, just like Louisiana and other places have as well. I used to go regularly and thought about going this year, even though it's literally sneaking up on me, so I know I probably will not be there this year. But there is a major film festival, the American Black Film Festival, that goes on South Beach and everything, and I used to go many years ago to that and enjoyed myself, even though I was not quite used to y'all's pop-up storms, even though I'm from North Carolina. But you would go in, you might go into a film, and you come out and there'd be a torrential downpour. So that did take getting used to as part of the film festival. It was also great as a younger man. I'm still not young. I think I was in my 40s or 30s at the time that I was going regularly and all along those lines. But it was still fun watching what was taking place and to even participate in some of the panel discussions as a fan, not as a participant in the sense of giving the lecture or everything, but still listening to the people and seeing some of the independent filmmakers and even going to some of the parties. Y'all also had a notorious club with literally was filled with beds. I think the club was called Beds and all along those lines, but it was interesting. And it was also one that was an open top kind of club. So literally if there was a rainstorm, you might get poured on because it was literally one of
Oh
those
yeah.
type clubs where you literally, the club was full of dancers and dance people, but it was also an open venue. So if it rained, you were going to get something.
Oh yeah. I just actually got back from the Cannes Film Festival. That
Okay.
was kind of cool.
Sounds
Yeah.
like it. What were you doing at the Cannes Film Festival?
We have a friend who's a producer, and he invited us along. We got to go backstage and got to check a lot of fun things out. I didn't get to see any films though.
And sometimes that can be the best times because I know that in the end of July there will be what is now called the International Black Theater Festival. It used to be called the National Black Theater Festival, and I used to go to that regularly. Went to some of the after parties. Even if you watch Judge Judy, Petrie Bird, who plays the Bella on that show, is known for regularly throwing a early morning party, and I would go to those on a regular basis and all along those lines. And it was quite fun to be hanging out with him. And of course, there would be a late night poetry slam, and there was Reader's Theater and some other things. I even participated a couple of times in the Reader's Theater. I think once or twice as a narrator, and maybe even once or twice as a reader. And one time doing it with Ted Lang, who used to play the purser on a Love Boat, if I remember his role correctly, and all those lines. But yeah, it can be fun. And like I said, well, I don't think I will make, because I want to say it's this month, it might even be in the next week or two, the ABFF, the American Black Film Festival. I will be trying to make it down to the International Theater Festival, which is held in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. But just share a little bit about what you've got going on. And like I said, part of what the dinner party is just like if I was inviting you to a regular dinner, I'd learn about you, and I'll be learning some more, even though I learned some about him earlier today, Les and Taylor. But if you just share a little bit about what you've got going on in your life and what your kind of life mission and life things that you are doing is all about.
So one of the things that I have is a nonprofit, and we do a meditation every day for world peace. Wow. So it's 7 minutes for world peace. And so that's one of the things that I have going on. I was leading it today, and, some days we don't have a lot of people, some days we do. And, just basically, I truly believe that when our minds are joined together, that we can create world peace. What do you think about that, Mark?
I like that idea, but you have so many people now, and we've talked about it even on the network and everything, when there are so many people that are very much in that divisive space, because a lot of times, whether it's Trump versus Biden or just divisiveness in general, a lot of times people are concerned about the divisive nature of our world and everything. And we're even seeing that play out in some of the conversations around Israel and Palestine, and lesser so because most people, I think, feel that Ukraine is in the right versus Russia, but you do still have it to some degree in the aid conversation around Russia and Ukraine as well. So how close do you think we are to getting world peace? And is it even possible to have world peace in the 21st century? Because those are just two places. There are also some serious conflicts going on, like around in Africa, I want to say around like Nigeria.
It's terrible.
Yeah, and Haiti has been having some serious conflicts. We know what's going on in Mexico.
I lived in Haiti for 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I actually speak Creole. And I have a good friend who just went back. She has built a hospital, and we built houses together in a Western Haiti. I didn't physically go, but, I helped, helped the villages there because we felt it was really important for the people to be building the houses themselves so that they could really feel the ownership of them and not just have something be given to them. So they had the wherewithal. We had somebody helping them, like a foreman who would help them to like pour the roofs or whatever needed to happen. But I have a very deep heart connection to Haiti, because I lived there for 17 years. And, and I it's such a beautiful country. It's just so sad what's happening. But my friend who just went back said that things are calming down and that it just seems to be like two sections of the city. And you just have to be mindful but her hospital is operational, the orphanage is operational, the schools are operational. And I saw a video last year where they graduated 25 nurses in her school. These women just all, it's like I guess like a high school, but they were training nurses and also excuse me, technicians, for the men, but the women would become nurses, and 25 of them graduated. And that it just brought me to tears, because with everything that's going on here, to see a normal graduation happening and these nurses ready to go in and help people. What a beautiful thing.
That's a very beautiful thing and everything. What drew you to Haiti, and what got you to go there in the first place? So what was it about Haiti that drew you to that area and all in that kind of way?
I actually went there with my husband, my former husband, and we went there to buy a sailboat, but we never did. We ended up living on a mountain, and I became Marbeth of Haiti. This is one of the books that I published in Haiti, called The Wonderful Way Home, because I love the people. They're just so beautiful. And I felt like Haiti was getting such a bad rap in the news. I was there under Baby Doc, and I went through about 5 regime changes, and it was pretty crazy. Everything was like drying up all around us. And but I'm a woman of faith, and I just knew that if I just held that faith, that everything would be okay. And it was, I mean, we were taken care of. And I was able to publish my book at that time, and it was like the first color book published in Haiti.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. The fact that you were able to get it published and all along those lines. So that is truly amazing. I definitely can't wait to hear your thoughts around that. But you mentioned this notion of world peace, and with all the conflicts that we are seeing in the world, and a lot of times people are talking about right versus left. We've got conversations around MAGA and other kinds of groups.
I know. And I try to stay very neutral, because I have a world peace project. So I really try to keep my thoughts, just really focused on how I truly believe that what we focus on is going to expand. So if we focus on people staying in the present moment, we're also focusing on world leaders, so if the world leaders can, suppose, we have our intention. I did an intention experiment in 2018 called the World Miracle Peace Experiment. You didn't know that about me. No. And what we did is, I knew that there have been people who have led experiments where they went in person and meditated in Washington, D.C. That was Dr. John Hagelin did that with the Transcendental Meditation Group. And when they went there, they had measured the violence, they knew what was happening. And even to the patients in the hospitals, and, all of the things that were crazy in the city. When they went there, they meditated for several weeks, and the level of violence dropped 20%. Violence dropped 20%. I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? They also went to Israel when there was a war in Lebanon, and they went there and they meditated, and the fatalities stopped. That was pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, I woke up one morning and I basically heard, you're going to lead a world peace experiment in 2 weeks. And I'm like, what? But, it was the last thing I had expected. I lived in Parkland, by 5 blocks away from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Right. And I was there when they had that massacre that killed 17 people and wounded like 30 something other people. And I'm very empathic. I feel other people's energy. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but when people are hurting, I actually feel that in my body. So I was immediately sending love and peace to, the helicopters are like swirling overhead. I'm sending love and peace. And it was when they came back to school, like 2 weeks later, I woke up, I couldn't breathe. could not breathe. And, I knew that I was feeling the kids coming back to school, after, feeling all of that terror.
Yeah.
So about 2 months after that is when I had that, you're going to lead this world peace experiment. And, it like, okay, I'm here to serve. So I had an online business manager at the time. She set everything up for me, and I was going to do it on a private conference line, but my line crashed. I did my very first Facebook Live. I went outside. I took my phone, and I did my very first Facebook Live. We had people from Japan, from all over Europe, and we focused on the Middle East because I figured we could get some real figures on that, right? We could get legitimate figures from, which we did, from the ACLED, which is, they measure armed conflict all over the world, and they're just a database. They didn't know me from, mud. And during the 6 months that we did this online meditation, just 7 minutes a day, where we just focused on everything being real, peaceful, and calm there, the level of violence dropped 20%. Wow. Now, that was like independent statistics. And I checked them like 3 times. Like, are you sure? Could this have actually happened? But it did. So I truly believe that if we get enough people meditating together, bam.
That's amazing.
We can do that. We've been meditating ever since, that Hamas, invaded Israel. We started a daily meditation at that point. But before that, we were launching our program the beginning of September. And we're not alone. There are a lot of other world peace organizations that are meditating at the same time. World Peace Day was September 21st. So I went back to that same database, and I looked at the stats from September 1st, and it really didn't show very much. It was only 3 weeks. So I went back to August 1st. Man, the level of violence, it dropped against civilians 38%.
Wow.
I have the statistics on we have a website, 10millionforworldpeace.org. It's all spelled out, TEN million, and if you go there, you can see these statistics. Now, we've still been meditating, and I'm still seeing a lot of conflict in the world, so I'm with you there. There is a lot of stuff going on there, but I truly believe that if we can just focus on peace, on how we can find, just similarities rather than differences. If I can look at how we can help each other, how we can collaborate with each other, I think that, we're well on our way.
Sounds interesting and everything. And I've got to bring in the other gentleman and everything because one of them spent some time in Hungary, and the other one is definitely got some interesting thoughts around the Democratic Party and all along those lines. But before I get to those gentlemen and all along those lines, I was just wondering, because one of the things that we've been having here in this part of North Carolina that I'm at and everything, which is Durham, North Carolina, is a increase in gang violence. As a matter of fact, across the street from my job, there was literally a drive-through where literally a 3-year-old was shot. I think last time I checked, he was still in very critical situation, and the gentleman had less severe injuries, even though that was probably the target of the drive-through. And there have been other incidences as well. So there have been definitely an increase, and sometimes there's even our young people that have the guns and everything. So just wondering, with all of that going on, you mentioned that you grew up or was living at one time near Parkland, and of course we all remember Columbine and a number of other places, including the shooting down there that took place at the Pulse nightclub, which was down there in Florida,
yes,
as well, and everything. So what can, in your mind, is there a way, can meditation help even when we're seeing a rise in people being depressed and wanting to lash out with gunplay? Because I know when I was growing up, you were lucky if you got into a fist fight. Maybe somebody had a switchblade, but there was not that much gunplay as it is now. So I was just wondering your take on that, and whether this kind of prayer can help a town like Durham, North Carolina, or any other town that is going through this gun crisis.
That's a really good question. I truly believe that meditation can help. I have I know people that have been bringing meditation into the schools to help. I have a podcast also called Imagine Peace, and I have a beautiful woman, Lillian Taylor, that I interviewed about a week or so ago, and she has a program to bring into the school system to start working with the children, so that, because they're in their homes, they're seeing bad behavior, and they don't know any different. They copy that, right? And so a lot of these gangs, it's based on these children who are being, neglected, really, that are being maybe abused. A lot of children are being abused. And so she has this program, which was, she's been working on for about 10 years, that using like augmented reality, where they could learn, and it's interactive, new ways of behaving, just like, okay, the dad is ignoring them and abusing them or whatever, just basically acting like they don't matter. And, how can you, how can you, how can you react to this? How can you feel, safe inside yourself? And I think everything really starts with the children, that we need to create programs for them. That's why I think it's so beautiful what my friend in Haiti is doing with her schools there, really setting a very strong foundation for them. There's so much, especially in the schools now, these children are just experiencing so much fear, and I don't even know, how do you recover from being in a mass shooting? And these children are experiencing that at such young ages. So I think it's really important that we set up some programs in the schools to work with them, and so that they can process and learn new ways of being, so that we don't perpetuate this.
That makes a lot of sense. Everything, like I said, I had Les on earlier on our news show and everything, and he was actually a youngster at the time that his parents were escaping Hungary, and he was a young person under 10, if I remember correctly, and all along those lines and everything at that particular time. But as he was telling us earlier, he was escaping what some people would consider communism and all in that space. So definitely wondering your thoughts around what we've been talking about, Les, just in terms of how we can make it better for the kids in general and just life in general, because I know a lot of times people are concerned. I don't have any kids of my own, but I do have two nephews that will be turning 15 and 16 in August. And I know that anytime an incident happens, I'm oftentimes worried about where they are. And even when my brother called me, because literally the shooting happened across the street from one of my jobs, and he would just wanted to make sure, because I told him that I had not heard anything, because I literally got into the building before it happened, so I did not hear any shots. And he was like, well, I just want to make sure, because you don't always have the best situational awareness. So we do have to be situationally aware and everything. So I just wanted your take as one that escaped a tyranny environment and have, I'm thinking, if I remember correctly, you have both kids and grandkids. So just your take on the nature of our young people and what they're going through.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity at Pod TV. Mm-hmm. And hello to Marbeth. When I was 5 years old, we escaped Hungary. My parents decided to leave on November 20th, 1956. And it took us 2 days to get through because we were at southern Hungary, and we traveled along the Yugoslav coast up to Austria, which is Sopron-Petősteg in Hungary. And we basically had 7 people that helped us. And there's the faith portion right there of people that thought, wow, this is a family of, well, I even had my cousin that came with me, and she was 14. So we were a family of 6 traveling. And if you can imagine, the secret police, AVH, was checking every station. So it was very dramatic. And 7 people stepped in to help us. And fast forwarding to the border, I actually, at that age, saw my first murder, if you will. And it stays with you, I can tell you, because when I was doing a swimming motion because the weeds were so tall and I was just a little guy, and I was right next to my parents, and I actually fell on the Hungarian gentleman, and I saw that he had been shot in the head and he was bleeding, and well, he was passed away. So for many, many years, anytime I would have a cut, I would think I was going to die because of that incident. So it does stay with you. But
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to also mention that I've had 2 speaking engagements to bring Mark up to date. University of Missouri St. Louis History Department, and also the Cardinal Mencenti Foundation in St. Louis. So those were really riveting times for me because I got to talk to the young folks, and my stance on being my parents, my mom and my dad, never allowed us to forget where we came from. So we knew the stories. And when I was in the Navy, I actually took leave and went home. And at the kitchen table, I pulled out a cassette player and they gave me their memoirs on cassette tape. So back in 2018, I decided it's time, because I've had all these teachers through the ranks telling me, you've got to tell this story. It's just dynamic and riveting, and people will appreciate it. So that's what I did, and I finished it up in December. And this is it, 12 Bells to Freedom. And those are my parents on the cover. And it's the Shahida story. And basically, it covers the period of time of 1942 to 1956. So we're covering a period of them witnessing atrocities like you were mentioning in Haiti. There were situations that occurred in other parts. They actually witnessed my mom especially witnessed the Jewish deportation. So she was the post office manager at a train station called Burgund, which is on the outskirts of Székesfehérvár, which is a Hungarian a railroad station. So these cattle cars would come through, and her duty, and anytime a train came in, was to go to the caboose and pick up the mail bags. So as she was going there, she actually heard people. She didn't know what it was at the time because it wasn't really news items of this was happening. So it was all secretive. So she discovered there was a door ajar about 8 inches or so, and there was, she said, a little Italian girl with, she could describe her to the day, and brown hair, green eyes, and she had this sorrowful look on her face. And she just reached out and yelled out to the passerbys, "Do you have any food?" And this elderly lady who was visiting her son at the air base across the tracks where my father was as well, said, "I have apples." And she gave the little girl the apple, and then she saw like 100 hands come from behind her. And she said she'll never forget that photo, that picture, because that was the atrocity that defined man's atrocity to others. So yeah, that was an example of my situation confronting the border, and it's more dramatic than that. So I don't want to ruin it for those who want to check it out. But yeah, I cover in the book, we cover life under communism, and as we talked this morning at the World Edition, I referenced that there are 2 worlds. You have the oppression world, and then you have the family world. And in Hungary, the families really were united and loved each other and kept each other in support and all of that. And outside their family, there was oppression. So they had to be very careful. Like if a group of high school kids were walking down the street, or college kids, the AVH would ride by and arrest them. And the AVH they were formed in 1948 by Rákosi, was the premier of Hungary back then. and he was appointed through the Russian connection. So he was a puppet ruler. So when he presented the AVH, their whole purpose was to bring fear to the country. So what does that mean? Okay. When Russia came in and occupied Hungary, they invoked a 22% tax on the country, based on gross national product. So that meant that everyone was catapulted into poverty. So as they took control of the government, they would arrest teachers, they would arrest politicians, they would arrest media. And if they couldn't brainwash them, they were sent to Siberia. So that's the dangers of living under communism. And there's one example, since you were mentioning kids, that really is just a tragic situation. When they marched in, they arrested the Boy Scouts. And you talk about all the different Boy Scouts, they arrested all of them, put them in orphanages. And when they were 18, they were executed. And this was done by the communist Russia did that. And the reason they did that is they did not want these kids to grow up and then be opposed to the communist government. So they did not want any type of situation where you have a revolution taking place. But ironically, by their own hand, they caused a revolution through the 5-year plan, where the 5-year plan was directed from the Kremlin and sent to the Yuri Andropov, was the ambassador to Hungary from Russia. And he in turn passed that information on to the Rakoshy premier. And then they invoked the rules and the laws. But they projected all this glorified opportunities for the Hungarian citizens, but it never came true. So what happened was the students, the Budapest engineering students, wrote a 16-point amendment, or not amendment, but a manifest, and published it, and basically stated that, now, ironically, these young men and women were the future of the Hungarian Communist Party, and they were the ones that spoke out. So that resonated with all of the citizenry, and the working class blue collar people jumped in and said, "You're right. All of these atrocities need to be addressed, and we're not going to stand it anymore." So then the revolution took place. And during that interim time, it only lasted about a week. But in that timeline, Khrushchev tried to act like he was a peace person, to seek peace in this. But all along, he was wasting time, because it took 1 week for the army, the Siberian army, to come down. Now the Siberian army was the one that defeated the Germans when the Germans were moving on to Moscow. So that same army was sent down with 300 tanks. And then when the tanks rolled in, all the peace talks were off. And then they devastated Hungary from that. And then when my parents witnessed this, you have to understand that, and it's in a kind of a way, it's happening here, which is shocking. But when you have propaganda from the media, that propaganda will direct processes going forward, or preventing a process. Maybe it could be an election type problem that they propaganda is stated, and they do something to prevent something. So that course of action is in. And so what my parents did is they didn't listen to the propaganda Hungarian media. They listened to Radio Free Europe. So they listened to Radio Free Europe. They actually got an outline of how to go about this whole process. So that, and coupled with the 7 people that were helping us, gave us our freedom. So
sounds like it and everything. I want to get to Taylor as well, because I know Taylor's been talking about this notion of a national divorce, and I know he's also talked about the notion of certain parties being influenced by propaganda, and there are some people that would say that both parties are influenced by propaganda and all along those lines. But I just wondered if you could share a little bit of your own narrative and how you got involved in even this movement, because it sounds like you're part of a movement, and I've even heard some people speculate that depending on what happens in the elections, that we may be heading to a divorce or even a civil war. And like I said, there's some people that have speculated that, and it sounds like you are saying something that is similar. So if you just want to share a little bit about yourself and how you got engaged in a number of these different things that you are doing as well. Taylor?
Well, I'm semi-retired, and I'm here at Nashville, Tennessee. I'm working with a group of people who are acting as medical couriers between hospitals here. I enjoy it, but it's not nearly as exciting as anything Les has been through or Mary Beth. I did want to ask Les, though, if he saw any parallels between the communism he lived through and the communism we're seeing from the Democrat Party, or the tactics, as you mentioned, the propaganda media and so forth. Do you notice anything else?
Well, it's going back to the 5-year plan. Going back to the 5-year plan, it's propaganda. They're trying to paint a rosy picture. So that is similar to what's happening here. But in the process of the citizenry, I'm sorry, the American people are not stupid. They see what's happening, and that's the point.
They see what's happening, yeah.
The same as the Hungarian engineering students saw what was happening and the lies that were projected, and they challenged the government about it. Here right now, you've got situations, and I tell the students that I met with at St. Louis University, Missouri, St. Louis, that they need to do their research. You don't take one side or the other. You're independent, and you get this information, communication, study it, find out the truth, then make your decision on which way you're going to go. So I'm not advocating for one side or the other. I'm advocating for intelligent research.
Just along those same
I think our young generation needs to do that big time.
Just really quickly along those same lines, and I don't know if Taylor agrees, but one of the things I talk about on this network, on this show, and in general, is that a lot of times a lot of people vote blindly, because I know that even here in North Carolina and other places, there are a number of PACs and a number of interest groups that will give a list of people that you should vote for, and a lot of times people will vote according to what their PACs are telling them to vote for, and all on those lines. So I was wondering, and this is for everybody, including Mary Beth and everything.
Right.
How often do you think that we are doing what Lester said, and then enough people aren't doing their due research, whether you are on the left or the right? I feel that both parties are not doing enough due research and all along those lines, and they kind of vote blindly based on what their leader tells them to do.
Agreed. It's so true. You know,
but along with that, Mark, they're not people aren't getting. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
No, I was just agreeing with Mark. I think
anyway.
See it all.
Mary Beth, go ahead and finish your thought, and then I'll hear from Taylor too. But you were agreeing, but how were you agreeing? And then Taylor will respond back.
No, I just think that people aren't educated, and they don't educate themselves about it. You know, they're handed a sheet, a slate, vote for these people, and they're not checking them out. They have no clue.
And just to add to what you said, Mary Beth, my wife she's retired also, but she was a teacher for 28 years. So when she says, you know what, they are restricting or reducing history in classroom. So why do you want to reduce history? Because you learn from history, like, for example, the Hungarian Revolution and all the atrocities and oppression. You don't want that repeated.
No.
You don't want that repeated, and the innocent people suffer. So if I could, I'd like to plug a museum in Hungary, in Budapest. called name escapes me right now. It's on, ironically, it's on the same address as the AVH building, Andrassy Street, and House of Terror. House of Terror. Google it, and you will see a wall of photos as you open it up, and all those innocent people were murdered.
Yeah. And along those same lines, and definitely Taylor, you may have some thoughts around what we're talking about as well. But that conference I was talking about, I was with a professor because he was on the panel that is involved in the space, I want to say, of social justice and health related issues. But he was talking about how he went to Atlanta and took his students to Atlanta, and he really wanted them to see the Martin Luther King Museum and a lot of the history that Martin Luther King was doing and everything. But his students didn't want to go to that museum. They wanted to go see the Trap Museum, which is definitely a celebration of hip hop music and a certain type of music, because I think it's got the jail cell that T.I. stayed in, and there's even a strip pole and a number of other things. So they didn't want to see the more historical element. They wanted to see something that they feel is important to them. And I'm not knocking that form of music because they just celebrated its 50th anniversary, but they did not want to see what Dr. King was doing at the King Center, but instead would have preferred to go to the Trap Museum and all in that space.
And look at all the Black history that's being erased in Florida. I mean, I'm in Florida, and it's really a horrible thing that they won't let them teach Black history in schools.
Yeah, I'm not. It's all history. Even
well,
the Irish,
anyway, Mark, you wondered about my foray into a national divorce.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Basically, what I'm seeing is that the Democrat Party has chosen an absolutely satanic agenda. And as a Christian myself, I find it intolerable. And so if the Democrats should win the next election, I'm very interested in a traditional morality and a secular morality split within the culture. I think that way we can perhaps avoid an all-out civil war.
He just disappeared. He'll come back and everything, and he can share some more of his thoughts.
I did want to mention something that you had mentioned, Mark. When you go to House of Terror, that was the actual AVH police building before it turned into a museum. So you can go to the basement and actually see the jails that they were using. And each area is marked as to who stayed there. And that included Raoul Wallenberg, and it included Cardinal Mencenzi was also in that area. And they have a torture room with electric torture type devices. So it's and then they showed also people that were tried in the same building on false charges, and they claimed innocence. If they didn't sign that they were dissident of the government, or then they would be taken down in the basement and hung. So that's the kind of stuff that you don't want to come back. And
yeah, that makes sense.
Taylor, you're back.
Yeah, Taylor's back and everything. Just really quickly, Taylor, I know that sometimes people are shocked because we've been having North Carolina, having had the pleasure of meeting him. So I know that he's got some interesting views, some that I may agree with, some that I may not agree with. Gentleman that is running for a governor that is very conservative and very Christian oriented, and all along those lines, that being Mark Robinson, who is running against a Jewish individual, and all in that space. And I was just wondering, what do you say when people are probably surprised that you are a African American that is of a conservative background? Because I do know that sometimes conservatives, and my mom's ex-boyfriend, he passed away many years ago, was involved in the Republican Party. And even though she was a staunch Democrat, Ron Roadfox was very much involved in the Republican Party and was out of the Atlanta area. And I know some others that were kind of Nixon type Republicans and everything that definitely got some benefits even from some of the programs that Nixon put out in terms of opportunity zones and things along those lines. So I was just wondering, what kind of pushback, if any, do you get from our community in general? Because I know sometimes people are surprised when they see a conservative. I've even seen some of the candidates that are being proposed to be vice president, like Ben Carson and others, have gotten some pushback for being the conservative voice and everything. So I was wondering, what reaction do you get when you are out there in the media landscape?
Well, I get the usual kind of pushback. I get, in fact, black conservatives aren't really regarded as being black. So, and that's okay with me. I mean, I'm looking at everything from a spiritual perspective, and I know I can't support a party that is about abortion, gender fluidity, and all that other nonsense. I can't do that. So, I will tend to vote Republican, but I'm not excited about them either. They're kind of weak. I think the only Republican that's had any kind of strength or testicular fortitude has been Donald Trump. And I appreciate that, so I'm definitely supporting him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and different people have different views about that. I saw that Lawrence Taylor just recently switched his allegiance from being a Democrat to a Republican, and I've seen others that have gone.
I saw that as well. I saw that.
And others have gone the independent route and all along those lines. But there are a lot of people that are, and I'd love to hear all three of your thoughts about this, that are frustrated that the two choices that they have, because I know a number of people that would much rather us have some younger choices and maybe even some choices that are neither Donald Trump or Joe Biden and everything. So I just wanted your take on that, because I know a lot of people that are frustrated because
I think those are kind of superfluous points. Donald Trump is old, but he's not an old 78. He's got plenty of energy. He conducts these rallies and so forth. Whereas Joe Biden, as you can tell, I think he's got dementia, unfortunately. And they're trying to use him, I think, as a figurehead, while his surrogates behind him are really running the country. But I definitely stand with Trump. I don't care how old he is. He's proven that he could do the job. He's provided peace and prosperity in his first administration. And the country was better off economically in every other way. So I think if you do a back-to-back comparison of Trump administration, Biden administration, you'll see by every metric, Trump did a better job. And I know he'll hit the ground running.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does, or whoever comes into office, what they will do and everything. But you kind of brought up a point that I've heard a lot of people say for the last several decades, because I'm in my early 60s and all in that space. But a lot more people have had this notion, even kind of what Mary Beth is talking about, that a lot of the special interest groups are the ones that are in control of both parties and everything. So I was just wondering y'all's thoughts around that, because a lot of people are very frustrated, whether it's the NRA or whether it's the Sierra Club or a number of others that are feeling that they are the ones that are moving the puppet strings and all along those lines. So I just wondering y'all's take on that, because I do know a number of people that have been frustrated for decades and to the both parties. But I just wondering y'all's take on that.
I would say that most of the people in the country are more moderate, but unfortunately we have the extremes of both parties that seems to be getting, the rusty wheel there, they're getting all the grease. And unfortunately, I would really like to see some younger politicians stepping in with more moderate ideas. And that hasn't happened. So I think it's really kind of sad that we're stuck with two choices, Well,
but Mary Beth, I kind of consider that the founders were men who might be considered extremists if you compare them to what's happening today. I think they might be considered the original extremists. And if that's extreme, I'll go with it. I mean, it's definitely pro-America. It was founded upon the Judeo-Christian ethic, and that's where we want to be, really. I think where the Democrat Party is leading us is some perilous waters.
Well, along those same lines, I thought Les had a thought as well. One of the things that I talk about in my history talks is the fact that if you look at Durham and even some of the other Black Wall Streets and everything, there was a lot of moderate white gentlemen and white women that were very much supportive of what was going on, even in the sense of helping those communities create their business wealth and their business legacies. Matter of fact, if you were ever to visit me in Durham and come to the Hayti Heritage Center, you would see that there are several stained glass images, and one of the stained glass images that is more prominent than even Jesus Christ himself is that of Mr. Duke. So Mr. Duke was known as a business philanthropist and a business leader and was part of the Duke family that created Duke University and everything. But he gave money into the African-American community to help them build their businesses and all along those lines. And even Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois talked about the fact that they had never seen such a race relation that was symbiotic and work together versus the narrative that we oftentimes hear about in the South. Because even some very avowed racists like Julius Carr, who was a white supremacist, gave some money into some of the Black Wall Streets as well. And some of that might have been done for economic reasons and for exploitation reasons, but a lot of times it was done because it was mutually beneficial to both parties. And ironically, Mr. Merrick, who was Mr. Duke's barber, because at the time he was a barber, there were segregated barbershops. So he was an African-American man that owned, I think it was about 6 barbershops, 3 of them for white Americans and 3 for African-Americans. But he was cutting Mr. Duke's hair and other white philanthropists' hair at the time that they were doing some of their biggest business deals. So he was bringing some of that knowledge back into the African-American community to create the Black Wall Streets and all along those lines. So there was a more symbiotic relationship that was going on, even though we talk about
that's smart business.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It was smart business on both people's sides. And a lot of times people don't think about that because, like I said, he was literally learning while he was cutting the man's hair and everything. And he was hearing him maybe talk to Mr. Vanderbilt or talk to Rockefeller. And he was bringing some of that same knowledge to create one of the historic Black Wall Streets that are oftentimes getting more accolades lately and everything, whether that's Tulsa or whether that's other places. Also, even one down there in Florida, because Rosewood is considered a Black Wall Street as well and everything. Unfortunately, urban renewal and gentrification got in the way, and that can be sometimes an intentional program to destroy some neighborhoods as well. So that was another part of the narrative, because I'm one of those people that believes in telling the story of history, warts and all. That's what I call it. I call it warts and all. So I do think that you can tell the positive, but you also have to tell the negative.
Warts and all, right?
What Les was saying. So you have to tell the whole narrative and not just the good part of the narrative.
Right. I don't agree with revising history. Let's just see history as it was and learn from it and keep moving.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to mention earlier that after the 60s and 70s, I kind of thought that we were kind of eliminating race relations and we were coming to be known more as Americans together. And it seems like the division started to take place maybe
in the Obama administration,
two presidential races ago. So it's
in the Obama administration.
Yeah,
there was division in Nixon as well. Well, even though Nixon did some other things, and there was division in the Reagan era. So I don't know if I can necessarily agree that it was strictly in Obama's era, because I do know some people that were upset at some Reagan policies, including some world policies and everything. So I do think that both parties can have some good programs, because I did mention the opportunity zones, which was actually created under the Republicans and things along those lines. So I don't know if I'm ready to be as pessimistic as you are, Taylor, in terms of the Democratic Party, because I'm also not a big fan of the MAGA side of the Republican parties and everything. So I think that there are extremists on both sides.
Mark, I'm kind of talking about the citizenry, the
American
people.
I stand with MAGA. That's okay.
I also coached soccer for 36 years. Okay, so I didn't care if I had Hispanics, if I had black kids, any and all. My goal was to teach them the tools of the game.
Right.
So, and I was proud when I would go watch them in high school and they made their varsity team. I said to myself, I did something good. No. So to me, it didn't matter black, white, whatever race it was. I had a focus. They had the passion to love the sport.
It's all about team effort.
And it gave me an opportunity to pay back my wonderful experiences of trying out for the U.S. Olympic team and a number of other things accolades I received, I think that mix coming in helps the population in general to treat each other as equals.
Yep, I agree with you on that. And everything. One thing that I was definitely curious to hear what Mary Beth has got to say about others as well, because one of the things that I talk about, particularly on this online dinner party, but just in general, is this notion of the inner critic. And I know that whether it is in relationships or whether it's even in political viewpoints and a number of other things, that sometimes we are afraid to speak our mind. Doesn't sound like Taylor is, or either of the other two, Les or Mary Beth, but sometimes people are afraid to speak their mind because of their fear of whatever the consequences are, both from their family and others. So I just wonder y'all's thoughts as to how you get past the inner critic, because sometimes we can listen to our own voice as well as the outer critics, and that's for everybody that is listening, because a number of our people that are listening on this particular show are in the creative space as well as the activism and the entrepreneurial space. So how do y'all folks get past that whole notion of the inner critic and that outer critic? And I definitely want to hear about the work-life balance, which is something else that we oftentimes talk about on this network, and particularly this particular show. But I just wondering and I'll start with you, Mary Beth. How do you get past that inner critic? Because I'm sure even when you came up with this idea of the peace project, there were probably people who were like, there is no way in hell, excuse my language, that we're going to have peace in the world anytime in the near future.
Absolutely. And they're totally entitled to their opinion. But, like I feel very strongly that, that I have to do what's in alignment for me. It has to feel good. And I'm going to do it, and are there people that criticize it? Yeah, I don't care. You do what really feels right in your heart. If it's going to hurt someone else, that's where I draw the line. I don't do things that are going to hurt other people. But in terms of, like I'm totally in alignment with world peace, and also, like I'm doing other projects too. I'm writing a book and I'm in a compilation book. So I'm definitely, keeping everything going. But I'm also very much, I think everybody has this, are people going to judge me, for if I do this or if I do that? I totally, I ran away. I told you I ran away to Haiti with my former husband, and I lived there for 17 years. Now that was a little bit of a shock to my family. They were totally, a little weirded out by it, but that's okay. I didn't care because I knew that what I was doing was right. And I, have done my part as much as I can to help, to do what I can to help rebuild the country. It's because it's something in my heart, and I'm very heart based. So if I'm doing something, it has to be in alignment with me, and then it's okay if other people don't like it. If they want to criticize me, God bless them.
That makes a lot of sense. I think. What about you, Les? Because I'm sure that when you told people that you were going to write a book about 12 Bells of Freedom, there were probably even family members that were going like, the book won't sell. There's no reason for you to write the book. And there were probably other people that were encouraging you. So how do you deal with that inner critic and those outer critics?
Well, see, that's the thing. My background and all of our backgrounds are life journeys. They're different, but see, mine covered oppression. It covered prejudice. It covered a whole slew of atrocities, in my opinion, that is scary because I'm seeing it happening here. And when you see that happening here, yes, I speak out and I get criticized for it, sure. But I'm like Mary Beth, I don't care, because I know, and if you ever do an ancestry and check your lineage going back, we're the sum total of the history of our family. Mm-hmm. So when you realize that you had some people that were tremendous personalities in your life, and you're carrying on that name and that life going forward, again, you know your background, you know the truths, you're going to speak it. And if you see something like my mom did, she saw an atrocity and she spoke out, to her benefit. And I'll show it again. She was an attractive young lady. So when the Germans, guards had, had their arguments with her, they could have thrown her onto the train. Or in her case, my grandfather, who was a guru in the railroad system of Eastern Europe, was always called upon to handle problems. So he had a rule: when you're in the house, you speak German. If you're out in school, then you're going to speak the language that you're in school for. So my mom knew 5 languages. So, but ironically, that rule in the house speaking German helped her in these situations where she confronted the guards. And because they thought, wow, this is a Fraulein here in Hungary. And all of a sudden the temperature reduced, and they were able to have a conversation, as opposed to angering that guard and then causing a reaction. So that's how I feel. I feel that all of us have our own history, and you're seeing what's unraveling on television. Yeah, I yell at my TV a lot. So my TV can't reply back and argue against me. So there you go.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of people are yelling at their TV and everything. Taylor, one of the things, and I definitely want to hear how you deal with that work, that kind of inner critic and outer critic, because I know you probably get some pushback even for being a conservative and everything. But I have some friends that are ministers, and some of them are conservative ministers. I also have quite a few liberal ministers, including Reverend Barber as a family friend here in North Carolina, and some who would be part of what some people call liberation theology and all along those lines. But I was just wondering your thoughts, because one of the things that I loved about Dr. King, and I've even watching an interview with Arsenio Hall, some people say it's the interview that got him kicked off the air with Farrakhan and everything, and he was talking about King's opposing the Vietnam War and other things along those lines. But I was just wondering, one of the things I used to like, even though I was a kid at the time in the 60s, this notion of our churches being very engaged in social justice, whether that was the job situations or whether that was the wage situations, or even trying to get some employment opportunities and all along those lines. And even with housing, and housing is a major issue around the country and around the world. I get frustrated. I actually had a friend of mine that got kicked out of his apartment recently, and when he approached some of our church leaders, they basically didn't have an answer for him, or didn't want to give him an answer, or gave him the runaround, and all in that space. So I just wondering, do you think that our churches are doing enough to actually do that part of their initiative, which is to help the least of these? Taylor.
Okay, you were kind of choppy there at the end, so I couldn't tell if you'd finished. Yeah, you were talking about the how we deal with the inner critic and that type of thing, and how I, as a conservative, deal with the noise. Like Mary Beth and Les, I just don't care. I know where I stand, and I have to stand with godly principles and morals and values, and so that directs my life. It determines my vote, all of that.
Yeah. And the other part of what I was asking is, do you feel that the church system is doing enough to deal with some of the social justice issues and all along those lines? So definitely that is, and I don't care what church it is, because I feel that a number of churches, whether they're Christian or Muslim.
I think so. I really don't think so. And it seems that churches are also trying to update their message, kind of make their message fit in with the times. And I think that's a mistake, because it seems like people just aren't grounded in the basics. And so they don't know. I think they think, for example, that God is a feel-good God, and, he loves everybody as they are, and that kind of thing. And there's a whole lot more to it. And I think that today's ministers, pastors aren't really educating as they should. I think that we need a whole lot more strength in Christianity today.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, Mary Beth, what's your take on that? Because I know that sometimes the churches were very much part of the peace movement in the old days, and definitely, like I said, Reverend Barber has been involved in some of that even currently and everything. But I just wondering, do you feel that you're seeing enough of the churches engaged even in peace conversations or just in social justice in general?
I think a lot of the churches are engaged now in social justice, and they're experiencing a lot of different changes and shifts as well. So, I think it just depends on the different churches. Everything has been, has been shifting and changing over the modern times. I think going back to the 60s and the 70s, I went to University of Miami the first year that they integrated.
Oh.
I had a roommate who was one of the 4 Black women in the school. Going back to, I know this has nothing to do with the churches, but, I've seen like so much shifting and I'm seeing so many positive things happening. Yeah, there's a lot of awful things happening. There's a lot of division, but there's a lot of positive things happening too. And really positive things. I'm seeing Blacks in places of power where, you wouldn't have even thought that possible back in the 70s. I'm seeing really good stuff happening. And are the churches involved with that? I think so. I really do.
That makes a lot of sense because I know that they just recently elected a woman from Kenya to be the first mayor, I think, is of Northern Ireland. So it's the first Black mayor that they've had in Northern Ireland, which was definitely something that you would not expect in everything. What were you saying, Taylor?
Here's the question, though. What are they standing for? What I'm wondering is, what are they standing for? I mean, in recent days, for example, we see a lot of Blacks involved with the lawfare that's being perpetrated against Trump. And the people involved, there are certainly Black people involved there and Hispanic judges and so forth. But I certainly don't like the moral ground that they're standing on. I think that they're coming from a very immoral place.
Like
I did want to ask you, though, Mark, what did you mean when you meant social justice with the church's role with social justice? What did you mean by that?
A lot of times there are issues that are being dealt with, whether it's hunger or whether it's housing and things along those lines. So I think the church has a role, just like other institutions, to help with that. That's just my opinion, as one that grew up in the 60s and 70s. A lot of churches that were doing that kind of work and everything. So I think that you can do a lot of work in that space of helping people that are.
That's a good. That's a good thing. I tend to think of the negative light, I think, but if you're using that in correlation with the church, I think that they're probably doing a great job. Really, I think that's a primary role that they're doing, community outreach and so forth.
Yeah, some churches are doing that, like I said, because a friend of mine, they do some feeding of the poor and others. But like I said, I do know some people that have approached churches and been given a cold hand, depending on the church leadership. So sometimes it can be a leadership question as well. And I've also seen people kicked out of churches because of their beliefs and things that they might disagree with the church leadership on and everything. So like I said, the whole church conversation will be very interesting because one of the best documentaries that I ever saw, and you may not agree with it, Taylor, but I want to say it was either Ted Koppel or Dan Rathers, but they did a documentary because my dad actually brought me to his house to watch it along with my younger brother before my nephews were born. That's why I know it was at least 15 or 18 or 19 years ago. But they were looking at world religions, and they found out that despite what we think, a lot of the world religions have a lot of commonality and more commonality than we like to give them credit for, and all along those lines. So definitely he did a study of Eastern and Western religions and found that a lot of the principles were very similar in terms of loving nature and loving your family and supporting each other and all along those lines. And there are, as Mary Beth just said, extremists, and I would say there are extremists on all religions, just like there are definitely extremist Muslims, there are extremists, even Hindus and extremist Christians as well. So I think that sometimes it's that middle ground that gets lost in the conversation. And that's just my personal opinion. But I do think that one of the principles that, like I said, I forgot whether it was Janet Rather or Ted Koppel, but it was one of those news legends, and they found a lot of similarities. And I want to say they studied close to 15 or 20 different religions, and they found more similarities than we would expect.
Oh, I would totally agree with that, Mark. I have a
But how
minor,
many of those?
and that's true. There's so much. If we can all focus on our commonalities rather than our differences, I think we'd all get along better.
Yep, that's kind of my philosophy. Like I said, not everybody has that same philosophy, but I do believe in studying the commonalities and finding the commonalities and even common groups. I remember that after 9/11, and that was another tragedy similar to what happened in Hamas, but there were a number of times that leaders of the mosque, and I have friends that are Muslims, even though that is not my faith journey, but definitely there were leaders of the mosque, Christian groups, and Jewish groups that got together, and I think there might have even been some Hindus and others, and they were finding ways to mourn the losses of the together, but also rebuild together as well. I think that happened. I know it happened in North Carolina. I want to say it even happened in some of the flashpoints, like New York and DC and places like that, where the actual tragedy took place and everything. So I think that that's finding that common ground. I've always been a fan of, no matter what people's beliefs are. I've got some friends that are like Taylor. I've just met Taylor, but I've got some friends that are very conservative, and I consider myself moderate to liberal. So I definitely have friends across the spectrum and everything. I just told you my
family members who are like Taylor, who totally, are MAGA. I'm not MAGA, but but we find commonality and we talk about it.
But here's the question: if you've got like a traditional morality and a secular morality, where's the common ground?
I think
I think that's the big
that, Taylor. If you can just take the judgment out of it and just say, well, what do we have in common, rather than what's wrong with those people and what's wrong with what they believe. I'll tell you, I don't like the beliefs on the left, and I don't like the beliefs on the right. I mean, I know I'm not alone. I know that there are so many people who are moderate who are like, stop all this craziness. Let's, let's find some common ground in the middle here. So,
well, this is, I'll tell you very generally, I'd say, I think the only politician that's going to get us close to a semblance of unity would be a Trump, who's going to provide some peace and prosperity. I don't see that coming from the Democrats. Not at all.
What were you going to say, Les?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comparative parallel.
Mm-hmm.
Back during the period of time prior to the Hungarian Revolution, Cardinal Mindszenty was trying to keep separation of church and state. Mm-hmm. So he was on a St. Mary's pilgrimage. So he would go to every city, and the attendance was so overwhelming, they'd have thousands of people that would come. So he could not have it in the church because the churches are too small. So he held it outdoor. So he had his own microphone system, and it was run on batteries because the communists would cut the lines, otherwise. So he did that. And the purpose of what we're just talking about is the faith, keeping the faith. And each of us have different degrees of faith. But when you take that faith home, there's your world. You're living in the faith of your home. And that's what Hungary was all about. They had two realities. You had an outside reality and a home reality. So the home kind of got people through all the oppression and the atrocities by keeping a faith program going forward. So here now, I mean, we're talking about, a little while ago, we were talking about abortion and things of that nature. Faith is such that you frown on abortion. You value life. There have been great people that they tried to abort them, and they lived, and they turned out to be tremendous individuals. I've seen reports on that. So when you have a situation where faith is being attacked, and outside sources can attack Christianity or the Jewish nation or whatever, that's what we're talking about. Keep the faith, keep everybody in line with their faith, and perhaps, like Mary Beth says, you'll come together at some point in time.
Yeah, like I said, revivals can even be faith-based, and sometimes they can surprise you and everything. Because I remember years ago, a family friend who is now a minister, but at the time they were a drama professor and all of those lines, but they did a piece about the Azusa Street revival. So if you've ever been to Los Angeles, if you've ever studied the Pentecostal movement and everything, that was actually a movement that started in 1906 and lasted roughly till 1915. So it lasted almost 10 years and everything. But the founder of that was actually William J. Seymour, who was an African-American preacher and all along those lines. Like I said, the Hayti Heritage Center is in the home of the former St. Joseph, of the current St. Joseph AME Church, but the St. Joseph has moved to a new location, but that was the original location. So it was built in 1869, literally as a brush arbor. So it was built by, at that time, free slaves, and brush arbor means that you're having service outside, literally on the out in the weather. So imagine having it in like 90 or 100 degree weather. And then the physical building, which is what the Hayti Heritage Center is now, and it was started as that center in 1975. So next year we'll celebrate our 50th anniversary, and everything was built in 1869. And urban renewal, that's what I meant when I said that sometimes outside influences can impact things as well, is the reason that it moved. So gentrification, which can sometimes be something that can happen under both Republicans and Democrats, can be something that can cause people to leave and be destroyed. But that's definitely, if you get a chance, study the history of Azusa Street, because it was a multicultural. Think of this, an African-American man in the early 1900s that had everybody from, because remember, that's the time of the railroads being built. So there were Asians that did service, there were Europeans that did service, there were African-Americans, and there were a number of others, because it was a true example of a melting pot and all along those lines. So whether you are of the Pentecostal, and some people call that more of the jump and shout kind of Christianity, or whether you are just a regular garden variety Christian, that is just amazing, the fact that he could bring those kind of people together in kind of a early version of Dr. King and all in that space. But a lot of people don't even know who Seymour Johnson is, and he was a man of peace that was able to bring these folks together in that sense, kind of what we're talking about with Mary Beth. I would urge everybody that is watching to study what he did, and he did it in a revival environment and all in that space. So a lot of people don't even know who he is or what the Azusa Street revival is that took place there in Los Angeles.
I tell you, I understand that though, Mark, because I have many friends of many different ethnic backgrounds and so forth, because they all share the same kind of characteristics. And I think if you meet them as a person of peace, they're going to respond accordingly. And I've found that to be true throughout my life.
Yeah, I'm imagining, I don't know this for a fact, like I said, I've just met
sometimes
you.
Not.
Yeah, I understand, but like I said, I've just met you now for the first time, just like this is my second time talking to Les, but first time meeting Mary Beth and you and everything. But I imagine that probably both of you probably even have people that don't have necessarily the same beliefs as you do, but you are able to, as Mary Beth was saying, meet them where they are. And if you are on a mission to change their mind, maybe you do that if that is what you are trying to do. But sometimes you can't change their minds, and you just leave them to be your friends as they are. I'm imagining, I don't know this, Taylor, but you probably even have some friends that are of Eastern European, not Eastern European, Eastern religion, faith, like Hindus and Buddhists, and you might even have some friends that are Muslim and all along those lines.
I do.
While y'all may have different belief systems, you still have them as your part of your friend circle. And sometimes you might even find some commonality, because I do know that there are some Black Hebraites and some even Muslims that would be equally as conservative as you. And I just know that for a fact when I talk to some of these folks. And just like I know that there's some that are very liberal as well. So it's like I said, there's different walks even on the various faiths as well.
Well, as Mary Beth would say, you find commonality. And that's what I've always been able to do, pretty much. I haven't really experienced a whole lot of strife with people. So that's a very true approach as Mary Beth has outlined it.
Yep, and I definitely agree with that. It's, finding that commonality and finding those common goals and all in that space is what it's all about. That's part of what I do with this dinner party, and I'm getting ready to wrap up shortly in another few minutes. But that's one of the things that I oftentimes talk about. But y'all kind of alluded to it. But one of the things that the founders talk about is that they are frustrated. I think even Mary Beth kind of alluded to it, and you did as well, Taylor, and so did you, Les. But one of the things that I know the reason that they founded Pod TV is they are frustrated by the notion and the nature of the education system, because they would like to see more, as Les was saying, history being taught and more things that are being taught in our school system, including some basic things. And I know that Nick Palveda, who is one of the founders, is a pension attorney, so he definitely talks quite often about the need for fiscal literacy in our school systems, and even maybe encouraging the trades and us teaching the trades. Because I know when I was in school, there was a multi-track system. You might go in, as I did, on the college track. You might go in on the military track, even though that wasn't an official track, and you might go in on the vocational track, and that was an official track. But there's not as much of that as there used to be, but a lot of things have changed. I was even talking to a friend of mine. It might have been that same Jonathan gentleman that I was talking about earlier, and we were talking about the fact that at least in my high school in the late 70s, was when they brought in-school suspension, and that is something that was not there before and everything. So it also getting ready to celebrate 50th anniversary. But just as a question, how do y'all feel we are doing in the school system, and would you like to see things like fiscal literacy and even generational wealth, because we have some people even on this network to teach about real estate and building your wealth and everything being taught, or do you feel that it's being taught enough in the school system?
I think the school system is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's these kids are not being prepared for the real world. I think they need to learn interpersonal skills. They need to learn self-development skills. They need to learn ways of maybe meditation. They need to learn ways of getting along with each other, with handling anxiety, with handling stress, and also with self-development. In addition, they need tools for life. I think that the way the school system has been is that it's, it was developed for as basically a factory fodder. They wanted people who could just learn specific skills, but there's so much more they could be learning. So and right now it's unfortunate that so many kids are there because they're the truant officer is going to come if they're not there. Mm-hmm. So they're there, but they're basically biding time. There's so much they could be learning now.
Hey, Taylor, along those same lines, I know one of the narratives in the African American community is the notion of the school to prison pipeline, because definitely there is more of the Black and brown people in prison than certain other societies as well. So I just wanted your take on that, and whether that is an issue that should be dealt with and all along those lines and in that space. So just wanted your take on that, because that is a narrative in the African American schools, this notion of school to prison pipeline.
And the prisons are all privatized.
Yeah.
And so they
it would seem that with the breakdown of the
Go ahead, Taylor.
I was going to say, it would seem that with the breakdown of the Black family, you've got a lot of youngsters going to prison, unfortunately. I do see the need for, outreach programs even there to help on the inside to get these people rehabilitated and, aim toward productivity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And definitely go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Mark, I was going to ask you, when you're in high school or in even 8th grade or below, did you guys have the paddle?
Yeah, there were teachers where they had the paddle. There were definitely teachers that had the paddle, and there was also the fear that if you got a whipping in the school, that you might also get a whipping when you out home, because there might be not just your parents that would get you, but some of the neighbors that would get you as well. So it's that the whole.
Well, I can assure you, we did have the paddle in school, but with my Hungarian background, I would have also been paddled at home. So,
right, exactly.
so, yeah,
I had it that way too, Les.
My point is that back then, it seemed like kids were more respectful.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think the world revolved around them. So in today's world, it's like Mary Beth was saying, they need education in a number of areas.
Yeah, and they also, like she said about interpersonal skills, they weren't as quick to, like I said, you might get in a fisticuff fight, but they were not as quick to grab a pistol or grab some of your parents' weapons and blow each other away the way that our kids are doing now and everything. Because there's a number of incidences. Literally, I get around sometimes by mass transit, and I did see maybe a month ago, there were some kids that were fighting, and they literally started firing gunshots because they were all packing, as the old expression goes, and everything. So they were pulling out guns and firing in a public environment. Fortunately, as far as I know, nobody was hit and everything, but that's just because maybe they had bad aim and everything. But it's just scary, the fact that they are carrying these weapons and don't always even know how to use the weapons. And I am also scared. I don't know about y'all, but I use the phone regularly. I use this computer regularly, but the social media outlets are very scary as well. And a lot of these kids are caught up in needing likes and wanting likes on Facebook and Instagram and the whole social media aspect of what's going on. So I do worry some, even about my own nephews, about how engaged they are in this space and how much they want to be liked. I mean, popularity was even popular back in our day. I remember having a friend that was a cheerleader, and I had athlete friends, and I even ran briefly, even though I wasn't any good. I was like Charlie Brown on my team, but I ran track for a few years, but I was a good recruiter, just like I'm a good recruiter to get y'all to be on this show and everything. So I still have that gift and everything, but I sucked as a runner. But I was able to recruit a team that won 3 out of 4 championships. Ironically, and y'all will get a kick out of this, the year we lost was the year that I recruited a friend that I knew I could beat. And unfortunately, that also cost us the championship because I got tired of losing as a young high school kid. So I recruited a friend
I got one better than you. And as I said, I coached soccer, and I had my last team. We won 4 tournament championships in a row, including a 4-state Indianapolis tournament. So that's my praise to the team I've got hanging on the wall right now.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting. But like I said, I do worry about that whole notion of social media, because I know that there have been a lot of reports with social media and people wanted to be liked and accepted, that they are saying that the depression rate among our teenagers is ridiculously high and all along those lines. And I think there's even been a spike, I hate to say it, in suicides among our kids as well. So that is very scary that we're living in this type of world. And I go sometimes to eat out, like in not fancy, but fast food restaurants. And I've seen families literally being there, and versus being engaged like we're doing here in this kind of conversation and everything, maybe even agreeing or disagreeing with each other, they're on the phones, each individual with another person all together. So it's like they're in the same room, but they're not in the same room because they're so busy being engaged on the phone conversations with their peer group, whatever their peer group is.
So Mark, I was just reading that in one of the Scandinavian countries, they have stopped allowing students to bring their phones to school.
Oh, wow.
And, the students are much happier. And they started doing that. I think it was in one town in Ohio. I don't remember, but I think that's something that would be really positive.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that and everything. Well, like I said, it's been a fascinating conversation. Like I said, that's what I do with the online dinner parties. I bring people together of different backgrounds, and we just kind of learn from each other and share with each other. But one thing that I do, which Mary Beth will love, and everything at the end of every show, is I am a believer in positivity, no matter what is going on in the world and all along those lines. So I give my guests at the end of the show, and I'll end with Mary Beth, actually, an opportunity to share how they can be reached, how they can be contacted. And because the Pod TV network is heard globally through Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Roku, a number of other sources, including some of the more traditional audio sources like iHeart and Stitcher and TuneIn and stuff like that, that they one of the things I like to do is give a message of positivity to somebody in Malaysia or somebody in Russia or somebody in Hungary or even somebody in Brazil or Venezuela may hear, and it can give them hope for their life and everything. So I'll start with you, Taylor. So if you got ways that you would like to be contacted, and if you want to share other thoughts that you haven't got to and everything, and any message of positivity, and if you have any book or anything that you want to plug, that is the opportunity to do that as well. But definitely at the end, give whatever message of positivity you would like to share. Taylor.
Well, I'll tell you, we'd better win this next election, or I'm afraid the Democrats are going to take us into another ideology, and I don't think America needs the kind of communism that Les grew up in. That's what I see coming down, and so I'd like to have people try and stay positive and think about what America should be, what America can be. You know, we've got a whole lot of potential, but we are being led by people who want to dismantle it and remake it in their image. And we don't need that.
Okay.
So I can be reached through TaylorWoodruff.com, believe it or not. Okay. TaylorWoodruff.com. And out there as well, you can purchase a copy of my book, which is called Case for National Divorce, One Christian's Perspective.
Okay. And is that available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or other sources as well? And
it's on Amazon, yes. As well as, I think it's out on Barnes & Noble and, Life Rich Publishing and a few others. A few other platforms, which I've been concentrating primarily on Amazon, though. It's out there.
Sounds good and everything. We add all the authors, including the three of you, to the Amazon bookstore that is connected to Pod TV, and Les knows that because I just added his book earlier today after he had been on the other show and everything, and I add both yours, Taylor, and yours, Marbeth, as well. Before I get to Les, what has been a reaction that surprised? Two things, Les, Taylor. What has been a reaction that you actually were pleasantly surprised that you weren't expecting? Because I'm always interested when people get a reaction that maybe they weren't expecting. Like maybe you were on Bill Maher and Bill Maher was nicer than you thought he was going to be, or something along those lines. And what is something that is unusual about you that people might not be surprised to know and everything as they've been listening to this show? So what is either a hobby or something that people might find interesting that they would not know if they were just knowing you in general? Taylor.
That to me, or?
Yeah, to Taylor first.
Okay, you were kind of choppy there as well, Mark.
No, just asking, what is?
Yes, Mark, I'm sorry, you were kind of choppy on that one.
Yeah, I was going to repeat it. I was just going to say, what is a reaction that you have gotten from the public that surprised you and everything? Maybe a liberal that surprised you by their reaction to your book or something like that. And then what is something about you that would surprise people in general? Maybe a hobby that you've got or an interest you've got that people would be surprised to know that you are interested in.
Oh, man. Well, I don't know. I don't think I can give you anything that's too shocking about me. I mean, I'm very steeped in what's happening on the political scene. I think people are kind of shocked when they find that I'm a conservative and a black conservative at that. Otherwise, I like the things that people like, cookouts and, barbecues and a few drinks with friends and that kind of thing. It's nothing extraordinary with me.
So
but
since you said barbecue, before we get to Les and everything, Louisiana barbecue, Texas barbecue, or North Carolina barbecue?
Let's go with Texas.
Okay.
I think North Carolina uses the vinegar based, right?
That is true. Yes, that is true.
Okay. I'll go with Texas then. I've lived in North Carolina, but I'm not a fan of the vinegar base.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
How about yourself?
I like North Carolina barbecue, and I definitely enjoy a good cookout. I was actually just celebrating Mom's 82nd birthday up in Rocky Mount. She was actually the first president of the Golden Leaf Foundation. So about 2 weeks ago on
God bless.
the 25th, we actually celebrated her birthday. And later on this month, as a matter of fact, a week from tomorrow, we'll be celebrating Dad's 84th. So yeah, both of them are still very vibrant. As a matter of fact, Dad is an artist, and he's actually done what some people would call protest art, because he did a piece that was actually based on Christianity, because one of the things that he got frustrated by, and I'm sure that Mary Beth and even Les might be able to agree with what his art piece was. He did a piece called Thoughts and Prayers, and it was using the old pull down fire system and everything. And it just said simply the words thoughts and prayers, because I think he created that piece right after 9/11, or it might have been after one of our other tragedies like Katrina and everything. But his notion is that too often we are too quick to give platitudes like thoughts and prayers and everything, but not have any action behind those thoughts and prayers. So we'll say that we want to give people thoughts and prayers, but not have a action behind what those thoughts and prayers are. So that's when he created this protest piece that is still recognized and still seen in society. So it's one thing to say that you want to give people thoughts and prayers for them to do better or to be improving and everything, but sometimes they need you to actually do something like come visit them, or if they're sick or something along those lines. So that was his notion, that too often we give it as a platitude and not a true action.
Right, a glib comment, and that's about it.
Right, that's exactly.
But yeah, we need to follow up. Exactly right. Yeah, agreed.
Yep. So he definitely had that powerful piece. Les, if you want to share that book and how you can be reached, and also any things that you want to give in the sense of peace and prosperity.
The book is titled 12 Bells to Freedom, the Shahida story. And the feedback, I'm getting 5-star reviews. So I'm headed on my way to a bestseller. So I'm getting a lot of feedback, though. When I first presented the book, I have a first edition now. But the feedback was that, all right, you got your freedom. Now, what did you do with it? Mm-hmm. So I added some information on the first edition about what I've done. I'm self-employed. I have my own business. I've got a distributorship. I created wine slushies. You may not have heard of it, but I was the first one in the country to develop it, and it's going real well. And key Major League Baseball, Cardinal Stadium is picking it up. So that, and City Museum, which is a big downtown event, they have like 4 different flavors that they use. So that, and then this morning we talked about that technology, green technology called Komodo K500C/911, and that is a protectant, retardant, and suppressant, and it happens to be a remedy for wildfires. So now USDA has approved it. We're on the verge of getting airdrops, which means that if you saw the C-130s dropping the current product being used, which is only retardant, you'll see the fire skipping over the trees from treetop to treetop, and it doesn't stop it. So Australia had a major fire where it went almost to Sydney, Australia. So now we've got a number of countries looking at Komodo for as a solution to that, a remedy for wildfires. I can be reached at the 2 websites I have is www.menrothwines with an S, menrathwines.com, and www.laslo, which is my name, LASZLO, chem, CHEM.com. So those are the 2 divisions that I have, and the Komodo is on the LasloChem.com, and the wine slushies are on the menrothwines.com. Menroth was my grandfather's and my mom's maiden name. So I paid tribute to my grandfather by naming the brand after him. So it's all back in the history that we're sum total of our descendants that lived before us. So
That makes a lot of sense, and that's definitely great and everything. I know that a lot of people have been very much getting into the wine and spirit business. I know a couple of people, and actually I just saw Donald a couple of days ago, and he is the distributor for a wine called Shoe Crazy. And I've also got some friends that are in the wine business, including one that has got one called Southern Wicked. I knew it had Wicked in the title, but Southern Wicked is tequila. And then there's a bourbon called Old Hillside and Melanated Wines. There's a couple of wine independent distributors that I know. So yeah, that whole wine industry can be quite fascinating.
Yeah, Mark, I just had an update. I was over at City Museum yesterday, as a matter of fact, and they reported that my wine slushies increased their alcohol sales during the summertime last summer by 22%.
Oh wow!
So it's Mary Beth would love it because the ladies absolutely love to go after it. And it's a number of different fruit flavors. You got cherry noir, you got pina colada, you've got margarita, you've got strawberry blanc and raspberry chardonnay. All these different flavors, and the balance of sweetness is perfect. I've had some ladies say, well, I don't like to drink, but I like your wine slushies.
No, those wine slushies are interesting because the thing that Shoe Crazy is doing is that they have expanded also because of the legalization in some places of CBD. So they've actually got some wines that are CBD infused as well. So they've actually added that, which can give you a definitely interesting mellow feel and all in that space. So they've got different proofs and all along those lines. But definitely that is another part of the spirit industry that is going on. I've got to teach you less before I get to Mary Beth and everything, but I will say that St. Louis has been one of those kind of thorns in my heel because I went to school in Milwaukee. I'm a Marquette grad and a devout Marquette fan, but that means that I also became a fan, ironically not of the Bucks, because I would root for players based on where my alumni went. So I became like an Orlando fan when Doc was down there. I was a Clippers fan when he was down there, and a Boston Celtics fan when he was there. Definitely D Wade in some of those places that he's been, and Butler. So that's more of how I rooted for my college teams and everything. Didn't have per se a set team, even though I liked the Carolina teams to do well and everything. But I did have a set team because I really wasn't into baseball until I got to school, which means I was a Milwaukee Brewers fan. And the team that always gives us trouble is the St. Louis Cardinals. So it's like every time we're on the road to championship, we're on the road to doing well, St. Louis was the one that derailed us. So that's why I said this.
Well, I was actually a good luck charm for St. Louis Cardinals because back on 2009 through 11, remember that period of time, they went to 2 World Series and 1 national championship. So that's when my product was really spiking during that timeline.
It sounds like wonderful. Like I said, my Brewers did not like it. Right now, they are in front, I think, ahead of several teams, including the Cubs and others as well. So maybe this will be the year, because I think the last time they were in a serious pennant run, I was in school, because that would have been like the 82 or something along those lines. Because I literally remember going to the library because there was a celebration, a street celebration, like there often is after a championship. I saw them win on TV, went down to the library and said, all right, I'm going to go to the library and study. Big mistake first. So I went to the basement because the library had 3 floors, went to the basement, could still hear the noise. So I just gave up and joined the celebration. As a young 19, 18-year-old, I'm like, I can't win. I'm just going to join the party and everything. I think I was 20 at the time. So I was like, I'm just going to join the party. So it's been almost 40 years since we had any luck. So maybe this will be our year and everything. Mary Beth, and like I said, we're getting ready to wrap up because I do need to wrap up and get some of the other shows on the network. But if you want to share how you can be reached about your book and any message of peace that you would like to share. And I don't know if I got the message of peace from
yeah. Well, I've definitely got a message of peace. I have a book that I am involved in now. It's called Women Essence, and that is a compilation book. But my book is Somatic Healing, the proven method to unlock your wellness, emotional freedom, and peace of mind. And that is not out yet. It's still being written, but it will be out shortly. And I'm excited about it because unbeknownst to me, I was writing a book about somatic healing because I thought it sounded like an interesting subject. And then I learned it was something that I had been doing all along. So isn't that funny? Because I am very empathic. I actually feel when people are holding emotional issues, I feel it in my body, and I actually know what it is, so I can help them release it. So that's something. And I also have my World Peace Project, which is 10 million for world peace. So that is 10millionforworldpeace.org, all spelled out. And we have a world peace meditation every day at 1:11 p.m. Eastern. And you can also reach me at marbethdunn.com. And that is my website. And you can schedule a 30-minute, or actually it's a 1-hour session with me at a really great price, if that's something that you'd like to explore. And that's about it.
Sounds great. And both you and Les, because I heard Taylor's, but what is, and so I'll start with Les and then go to you, Mary Beth, and then, like I said, I'll go out with a couple of PSAs and everything. But Les, what would your message of peace be for our global community? And then I'll have Mary Beth share hers as well. But what would your message of hope and positivity be for our global community?
Well, when I do the book signings, I always relay this message that always remember, freedom is not free. You have to earn it.
Mm.
You know, that makes a lot of sense and everything. What about yourself, Beth? What message would you give to folks in terms of a message of positivity and hope and all along those lines? And I think we'll go out with a message about supporting our educators, as well as a Christian talk show that is actually done by some associates of mine and everything. But what message of positivity and hope would you give to our listeners from around the world?
I'm going to say you always have a choice. Every minute you have a choice. You can choose to take offense. You can choose to get angry. You can choose to be peaceful. And you can choose to see things. You know, if you're upset, you can always say, well, how can I see this a different way? Is there another way I can look at this? You know, because we always have that choice to choose peace. And when we choose peace, we become closer to our Creator, which is pure peace, right? So peace is godliness. And so I would recommend choosing peace.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate both of you, as well, all three of you being on the show and everything. So like I said, we'll get out and hopefully I'll get you on some other shows. And like I said, Les was earlier on the World Edition, and I definitely have sometimes even guests make returns to the online dinner party. And all along those lines, I had a guest that was supposed to be appearing, another one, but they just sent me a note that they were running late and maybe they'll join another one, and they were also not quite sure of the nature of the conversation. So I'll have to get with them to explain how the dinner party works and everything. But definitely we'll go out with this message about education and about this talk show that deals with how much do you know about whether it is an actual Bible verse or whether it's something that is perceived as a verse, because Mario Steele, who is in the area of Raleigh, North Carolina, has a show called Bible or Babble. So he said you have to, I think, hear the verse and then decide whether it actually came from the Bible or whether it came from another more secular source, to use Taylor's notion and everything. But he's been doing that, I think, for a number of years. And then I've also got maybe one or two other PSAs. But we're getting ready to get on out of here. But it's been a fun conversation, and I look forward to seeing all three of you on in the not too distant future on another show. And I'm glad that I was able to meet y'all through the world wonders of the internet, and look forward to seeing you back in the not too distant future on other programs as well. But glad to have this conversation and thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's see what this gentleman, I think he's from one of the Midwest areas, is talking about supporting educators. He's been doing this for a few years as well. So not just the educators, but also the support staff, like the janitors and the guidance counselors and a number of others. So let's see what he's talking about, and we'll get ready to get on out of here.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you. I thank you for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we
It's time for Bible or Babble. Gather round for your new favorite show. If you hear the word, show 'em what you know. Let's go. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go. Calling every saint, we gon' put you to the test. See who know that B.I.B. a little bitch. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go.
Are you looking for money-saving strategies for your business and personal finances? Are you tired of working hard every day with little or nothing to show for it? Contact Prosperity Financial Services, LLC right now for your free financial consultation. Call now to reserve yours today, 804-349-8600, 804-349-8600.